How many of you have been to an event where there are some big kahunas in the room? Some super important people. Maybe it's the President of the United States. Maybe it's somebody who's incredibly influential in the entrepreneurial space, like Gary Vaynerchuk, or maybe it's Grant Cardone, or maybe it's a famous athlete. Maybe it's one of the Williams sisters. You're at an event, and automatically you think of who the most important person is in the room. You're going to have one of two reactions to this person. You're either going to want to do everything in your power to get to speak to them, or you're going to assuage yourself and actually be incredibly intimidated by them. I'm always the person that is the go-getter. I'll lightly push and shove my way to that person to ask them a burning question. To ask them a question either about their passion, their purpose, to ask them a question about how they got to where they are, to really just gain any little bit of energy that I can from them in hopes of having that light the fire that's within my soul, and in order to have them encourage me somehow just by their presence. Let's downsize that room a little bit and imagine that we're in this room here. You may have some guesses of who the most important person in this room is. Maybe it's Andrew, our president. Maybe it's our guest. Maybe it's Tarina, who we haven't seen in a while. But at the end of the day, no matter what room you're in, whether it's a big room or a small room, whether it's a doctor's office or it's maybe a grocery store, the most important person in the room is actually you. The most important person in the room is you. Now, I don't mean just you being there. I mean you truly being there as your highest, best self, as your most energized self, as your most friendly self, as your most patient self, as your most giving self, as your most you self. Imagine if no matter what room that you were in, you made sure that you showed up as the most powerful version of you. Imagine that you showed up as the most energized, as the healthiest, as the happiest, as the most stress-free, and as the most personable version of yourself. Now, this ultimate version of yourself looks so different for you than it does for the person next to you. Every single one of us is built with a certain set of talents, a certain set of qualities, a certain set of passions. And I truly believe that every single one of us has something very unique to give to the world. So as soon as we put ourselves into specific rooms, no matter what the size, no matter who else is in there, as long as we're showing up in the way that we're truly meant to show up, we are doing a service to ourselves, and we're also doing a service to everybody else in the room. All of a sudden, when we aren't filled with self-doubt or fear about the people who are in the room, or maybe the people who aren't in the room, we're able to really just show up in the way that we're meant to. And we're able to connect with the people that we're actually meant to. We're able to foster those relationships with somebody that maybe seems important, or maybe somebody that doesn't seem so important but then ends up being really important. You're like, wow, phew, so glad that I showed up as Nat. So glad that I showed up as my happiest, healthiest self, as my most authentic self. So then when we start showing up in that way, how are we inspiring the people around us to show up in that way? Imagine if every single one of us walked into this room today, made sure that we got in our workout to make sure that we got that blood flowing, make sure that we ate foods that were nourishing, that maybe not too much turkey to get us super sleepy in our seats. We made sure that we took some time to take care of ourselves, maybe go get a manicure, or maybe go get a massage, or maybe spend some time actually intentionally walking around the block with our dog without being on our phones. And imagine from that place of making ourselves a priority, we then entered this room. Instead of entering this room not having worked out, having pressed snooze 17 times, having not actually eaten anything all day, and having not taken some time for ourselves. How would we show up in a room differently? we wouldn't show up as powerfully as we were meant to. So no matter what room you enter, whether it's big or small, know that the most important person in the room isn't who you think it is, but it's actually you. And your sole responsibility is to show up as you, to make yourself a priority. And in turn, you inspire others to do the same. And from that place, relationships flow naturally. From that place, connections are made effortlessly. And from that place, we're able to truly shine the way that we're meant to.